I'm delighted to say I'm now joined by Julie Robinson, CEO of the Independent Schools Council. Julie, very good morning to you. Welcome to breakfast here on Talk Radio. Beautiful looking morning out there. And we've been talking about education this morning purely and simply because the Telegraph, amongst others, has got a story about Ofsted worrying that the £14 billion they're about to hand over to schools in this country is going to be squandered. I was just talking to someone from the Times Educational Supplement who said basically most of it's already going to be spent anyway on a pay rise for teachers, and schools in this country are under quite a lot of stress, aren't they, pressure?
Yes, all kinds of schools are concerned about funding for things like teachers' pensions as well as salaries, but of course teachers are the most important asset for any school. And I think there's a tendency for the debate to fall into pitching one type of school against another type of school.
Right.
And actually what I'm saying today is we are all allies for education, and should be working together more closely.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a programme going on now called Celebrating Partnerships, cross-sector partnerships between independent and state schools. How does that work? Tell us about that.
Yeah, we're highlighting the collaborative work that already takes place, and you'll know that the government has an agenda for levelling up and sharing opportunity across the country.
Yeah.
And we're showing that independent schools and state schools are already working together. And we've got a website called Schools Together that has over 5,000 examples of partnership projects of all kinds.
And can that be something like, for example, I know with my own kids, using maybe the facilities of an independent school so that local kids who go to the state school can maybe get the swimming pool or go to the sports field or something? It
can be that. It can be facilities. It can be governorship. It can be bursaries, all sorts of things. But actually, it's a much more complex picture than people assume.
Right.
So the swimming pool example is only meaningful if schools are supporting swimming training and getting children to swim.
Yes.
And so we're saying let's look at the really good partnerships like in Bath, where Prior Park and St Gregory's share A-level teaching so that their pupils get a chance to do both politics and economics A-level, because one school does one of them, one school does the other.
Okay, because there is a perception, rightly or wrongly, I suppose, that most state schools are not as good as most independent schools, and that's just a bit too simplistic, really, isn't it?
Oh, totally. There are some fantastic state schools out there, and people tend to get the wrong idea about independent schools. Actually, there are only 80 independent schools across ISC, 1,300 schools, which have over 1,000 pupils. Typically, it's a few hundred pupils. They're really quite small schools, and we've got independent schools sharing the facilities of academy schools. So there's one where the academy has the swimming pool, not the independent school.
And so how does it work financially? Because a lot of what we talked about this morning was the budgeting of schooling now in this country, and a lot of independent schools have known about budgeting for a long time. But a lot of state schools have suddenly been told, right, now you're running the budget, so get on with it. And I'm not sure they're equipped for that, and I think that's a problem for a lot of people. I wonder whether, I don't know, you might tell me there already is if there's any kind of financial expertise that independent schools can bring to running an actual school's budget.
Yeah, state schools over recent years have had to take control of their financial planning, and there is a whole group of support for that. And independent schools have the Independent Schools Bursars Association. Those two organisations work together, as do the NGA and AGBIS, which is the governance organisations for both sectors.
Yeah.
So yes, they are sharing that kind of expertise, and all schools work to per capita funding. So all schools are under pressure, and that's why we need to work together.
Yeah.
It's a really diverse system.
And as far as bursaries and things like scholarships go, is that something you're doing enough with, do you think? I mean, do you think there could be more opportunities for kids maybe from poorer backgrounds to go to the independent schools?
We're really keen to promote that. Recently, we've published a book called Transforming Lives, funding for bursaries to encourage schools to raise more money. The trouble is it's really expensive funding a bursary for a pupil through 6 years or so of education. And as I said, most independent schools are just a few hundred pupils. They don't have big foundations. But already we're in a position where 1 in 13 children are on a means-tested bursary, so that's pretty much one per class.
Yeah.
And we're encouraging that to improve. So there's a school in London where they're halfway through raising £40 million at Latimer Upper towards more bursary assistance.
I used to play football against Latimer Upper.
It's a great school.
They can raise 40 million quid now.
They're raising that outside of school fees.
Right.
So
used
that
to go
they
and play
can
football against them at Wormwood Scrubs, I seem to remember. Taking me back. But so, I mean, is it the case that you are much better off in an independent school in terms of class size? If you are a pupil, you will learn a different curriculum from the state curriculum, or is it all very much more the same?
Independent schools have freedom over curriculum assessment and admissions, but they tend to do GCSEs and A-levels in the same way as state schools.
Yeah.
But what parents are facilitating through paying fees is more per capita spend per child. So what you end up with is more staff in that school, more pastoral care, more subject specialist teachers.
Okay. And a lot of the fundraising that you do, for example, for independent schools, where does that come from?
Well, Latimer, as an example, is fundraising through parents and others. There are other schemes. Sometimes the state will fund specialisms like music pupils or dance specialists.
Yeah, because I mean,
pupils.
my kids who go to state school have got a kind of, occasional music teacher who occasionally does some work and occasionally disappears for long periods of time. They don't seem to have a kind of musical department that works particularly well.
And that's probably down to funding cuts. Yeah. And that's why Nick Gibb has announced some music hubs. And independent schools really want to be involved in that. So on our Schools Together website, there's a publication called All Together Now about setting up music partnerships specifically to share the cultural, social capital of independent schools across the system.
OK. So if you're a parent listening to this and, being driven up the wall by children who are home for half term, and you want to get one of your kids maybe into the opportunity at least to go to an independent school, or even get the school interested in doing some kind of partnership, what can they do?
Yes, talk to your school. Look at what's available. All parents just want to choose the right school for their children, and there's a whole range out there. You might have a great state school on the doorstep, you might want to choose an independent school, but don't be put off by reports of high fees, because actually half of our independent schools charge under $14,000 a year in fees. So it's a significant outlay, but you might find even then the fees are lower than you expect, and there might be bursary schemes to support placing your child there. But absolutely talk to your school leadership team and ask them what they're doing in partnership. You might be surprised they're already collaborating.
Yes.
But we really should be breaking down any potential barriers, working together across the system so that we're all part of this diverse ecosystem of education in the country. Sure. There are exciting opportunities out there.
I think you're absolutely right, Julie. Thanks very much indeed. Julie Robinson, CEO, Independent Schools Council.